Today we're going to be taking a look at some Fenixes and some Epixes. Is Epixes a word? Some Epics, many Epics, two Epics? Okay, let's just go. Hey there, welcome back to my channel. Since I can't stop talking about it, today we're going to be talking about the Garmin Fenix 7 and the Epix Gen 2 again. But this time around, I'm kind of recreating a video I made a couple of years ago on the Garmin Fenix 6. And in that video, I kind of go on a deep dive on the differences between the base model with the Gorilla Glass and the premium model with the Sapphire glass. What do you get when you upgrade to Sapphire? And it's not just the lens material, there's a couple of other things to consider. And one downside to going with the Sapphire model, which we're going to talk about in this video today. I do want to make it clear that this is not a full in-depth review about the Garmin Epix Gen 2 or the Fenix 7. This is just a comparison between the base model and the Sapphire model and what you get for all of that extra money. If you do want to see a deep dive review on both of these devices, I'll link those up here if you want to go check those out, but wait till the end of this video because this one's pretty interesting too. Before we go any further, I do want to just give you the TLDR of this entire video, which is probably going to hurt my retention for this video, but why not? If you're looking at picking up a Garmin Fenix 7 or the Epix Gen 2, I'd suggest taking a hard look at the Sapphire Solar or Sapphire models, because for $100 more, it brings with it more than just a Sapphire glass lens, which alone is a huge benefit in itself. And that Sapphire lens is particularly more important this time around with the Fenix 7 than it was with the Fenix 6, and I'll talk about why later on in this video. I just think when we're talking about such expensive investments in devices, you're talking about $800, $900, $1,000 when you consider what you're getting for that additional money, it's kind of worth it. And listen, I'm certainly not trying to put you in debt or make you spend money you don't have, but if you're looking at these devices, you can afford these devices. So if you're willing to spend as much as $800 to $1,000 on a watch, I feel like an extra $100 is kind of worth it for what you get. And if you can't afford these watches, there are watches in the Garmin lineup that are way cheaper that do a lot of the same things. Look at a Garmin Forerunner 945, 745, 245. All of those watches have a lot of functionality that these high-end watches also have at a fraction of the price. These do have a little bit more, but if you're on a budget, don't look at these watches because they're very expensive. Okay, now let's talk about the models I actually have with me at the studio today. We've got the Garmin Epix Gen 2 all the way on the left here, and this is the base model with the Gorilla Glass display. To the right of that, we have the Epix Gen 2 Sapphire model, and this is the black coating. It also comes in a lighter color. And then next to that, we have the Fenix 7X, and this is in the carbon gray. This is the solar model, non-sapphire. Next to that, we have the 7X Solar Sapphire, and this is the black DLC coating. And just to jump ahead to a bunch of questions I've seen in the comments between the carbon gray color and the black color, it's a very subtle difference between carbon gray and black. On the right here is the black one, on the left here is the carbon gray, and I've seen this commented so often because on Garmin's own website, side by side, these look identical. I feel like it's the same picture on their website. Hey there, are you enjoying this video? If you are, maybe go hit that like and subscribe button down below because that really helps me out. Okay, back to the video. What do you get in the Sapphire model that you don't get in the base models? Obviously, you get Sapphire glass instead of Gorilla Glass, which alone in the past I would pay for $400, and I have on my older Garmin Fenix 6 Sapphire. I've never scratched a Sapphire Garmin in my experience, and I've abused a lot of them. And let me tell you, I have scratched a lot of Gorilla Glass Garmins, so now I resort to putting screen protectors on them, which isn't that ideal. It does work, but it's not perfect. Another perk with going with the Sapphire model is that this time around you get a titanium case with the Sapphire display. And in previous years, like on the Garmin Fenix 6, you would have to opt to go for the titanium model separate than from the other models. On top of that titanium bezel and case, you also have the option of going with a color like gray or black that have a DLC or diamond-like carbon coating. And you can see my black Fenix 7 X here, it has that diamond-like coating, and this is just a much more durable type of coating. It uses a different chemical process when they apply it, and in my experience, DLC is definitely more scratch resistant than the regular PVD coating I think they use, but just keep in mind, nothing is scratch proof. All of these watches will scratch if you hit them hard enough, and mine have in the past. The DLC does hold up just a little bit better though. Another benefit to the Sapphire model over the base model is you actually get more internal storage inside the watch. So the Sapphire model comes with 32 gigabytes of storage, and the base model on both the Epix and Fenix 7 come with 16 gigabytes of storage. That's still a lot of storage for a watch. This storage is used for things like music that you download from Spotify or Amazon Music or whatever, and also for your maps that are stored for your navigation purposes. Another strange move this time time around with the Garmin Fenix 7 and Epix is that on the higher end Sapphire model, you get multi-frequency GPS, whereas on the base model, you don't have this function. This allows you to acquire more satellites during a GPS activity, and more satellites actually equals more accuracy. Shocker. Multi-frequency mode is great, but it does take a hit in battery life, and I'll let you check out the full review video for details on that. I just wanted to mention it briefly here. Now I want to shift this video and talk about the actual materials of the glass between the Sapphire model and the Gorilla Glass models and what the differences are. The Sapphire glass used on the Fenix 7 and Epix is essentially a man-made crystal that's nearly as hard as a diamond, which gives it incredible scratch resistance. On the base and solar models, Garmin uses Gorilla Glass DX, which is a mineral glass with an anti-reflective coating, much like what you find on your iPhone or any smartphone. I don't know if it's actually that kind of Gorilla Glass, but it's very similar. There is good scratch resistance, but not nearly the same level as Sapphire. It's a whole different ballgame. If you want to learn more about the difference between Gorilla Glass and Sapphire and see how difficult it is to scratch them, because I'm definitely not scratching these, definitely go check out Jerry Rig Everything's videos. I'll link one of his videos up here you can go check out, and you might cringe a little bit as he tests different materials because it's pretty aggressive. So you're thinking, Sapphire, why not just put that on everything if it's so good? Well, Sapphire does have one downfall, and that it's more reflective and actually transmits less light than typical glass. To demonstrate the differences between these materials, I brought them out in various lighting conditions and filmed them to show how they compare in different lights. First, let's talk typical indoor lighting or office lighting, and that's kind of what I have here. So if we take a look at the Fenix 7X here, the one on the right has a Sapphire lens and the one on the left has a Gorilla Glass lens. And I think you'd agree with me if you could say that the Sapphire is a little bit more cloudy. You can't quite read the numbers on the watch as well as you can on the Gorilla Glass. And this is typical for this kind of material. The Sapphire model just has a little bit of a fog to it compared to the Gorilla Glass. Even when I move it around, you can see that at certain angles, they look almost identical, but right from a top-down view, typical to what you'd have on your wrist, there can be a little bit of a haze to it. And this is typical for Sapphire. This isn't a defective unit or anything, and it's the same for any watch out there. You could buy a mechanical Omega or something with a Sapphire lens, and the same situation applies. Now let's take a look at the Epix Gen 2, because the difference here is a little less noticeable. So on the right of your screen is the Sapphire model, and on the left is the Gorilla Glass model. And you can see that the Sapphire model does look a little bit gray in the background where it's supposed to be black. It's a little bit foggy, a little bit hazy compared to the Gorilla Glass model, but it's way less noticeable because of that AMOLED display, which is extremely bright compared to the transflective display of the Fenix 7. I think for most purposes, the Sapphire model isn't that different than the Gorilla Glass model when it comes to the Epix Gen 2 in terms of readability. Now let's talk about being outdoors in direct sunlight, Gorilla Glass versus Sapphire. That's where the difference becomes less noticeable. So if you have the sun coming right down on your wrist perpendicular to the watch on the Fenix 7, both the Gorilla Glass and the Sapphire model are very readable. You can't really tell the difference. The only time you can see a little bit of a difference is if you angle your wrist off axis a little bit and you're kind of looking at the lens at an angle, then you can start to see that haze creep in from the Sapphire model. And that difference becomes more noticeable if you head into an overcast or into the trees in the shade. That's where you'll see the difference between the Gorilla Glass and the Sapphire a little bit more. Now when it comes to the display quality between the Epix Gen 2 base model and Sapphire model out in direct sunlight, I think they both nearly look identical. The AMOLED display on these watches looks amazing, and because it's so bright, you don't really notice any difference between the two when you're outdoors. Another thing I wanted to compare in this year's Garmin Fenix 7 is the backlight color and contrast. So in previous years, there were models that looked a little bit blue and washed out and less contrasty, just not as appealing looking, and then there were some models that looked really nice and contrasty. Well, this year, I'm happy to report that all of the samples I've tested have a pretty good contrast ratio, and they all look pretty good. I haven't seen any so far that look terrible, and I've had my hands on about, I don't know, 8 of them, 9 of them, and all of them look pretty good so far. That's not to say the problem's solved. I mean, I've only seen 9, there's probably millions of them out there. I'm just saying from what I've seen so far, they look pretty good. And if you have a blue washed out or low contrast display, definitely comment down below and let me know, because I'd like to hear from you. I'm just sharing my experience, so take that for what it's worth. So in previous years, when it came to Gorilla Glass for Sapphire, I would always suggest people who bought a Gorilla Glass display to just throw a screen protector on it from Amazon, couple of bucks. That protects your display, protects your investment. Everyone's happy. This time around though, there is a variable because the Fenix 7 is now a touch display, so adding a layer of protection to the top of it could mess with that, and unfortunately it kind of does mess with that. I've done some testing. I don't actually have a screen protector designed for the Fenix 7X, but I've tried some smaller ones that I have for the 945 and the Garmin Enduro. And in my testing so far, the touch stuff still works. It's just not as responsive as it is without a screen protector. For instance, if you're just swiping through the menu items, sometimes it doesn't pick up a swipe or two. It picks up most of it. It's still pretty good. It's definitely usable. Okay, I think we've hit the end of this video, and yeah, this was a really nerdy one. I apologize for that, but there are a lot of questions around the DLC versus Sapphire versus Gorilla Glass, and I wanted to try to address those in one video and maybe help you out. And if it did help you out in making a purchasing decision, maybe give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss more videos from me in the future. And if it didn't help you out, I'm sorry. And if you are interested in picking up a Garmin Fenix base model or Sapphire model or any of these watches, check out the links down below in the description because they do help support my channel and they cost nothing extra to you. Whew, that was a long-winded one. Okay, that's all I've got for this one. Bye.